So I just wanted to introduce myself first. My name is Leo. I'm from Ravindran Associates. We are a IP firm based in Singapore, specializing in the enforcement of IP rights across the region. Today is a public holiday in Singapore as we celebrate Vesak Day. It's a Buddhist holiday, so happy Vesak Day to everyone as well. The Southeast Asian IP SME Help Desk has approached us to share our experiences of enforcing IP rights across the region in Southeast Asia. I just wanted to let you all know that I'm not giving any legal advice. We're just sharing our strategies and what we think are the best practices to combat counterfeits online in this region. So I'm very deeply humbled to be able to share this with all of you, and I would like to thank the help desk and my boss, Mr. Ravi, who's also here, for giving me the opportunity to speak. Firstly, I understand that there's a lot of you here, and many of you here have been in the business for much longer than I have. You have more experience, expertise, and knowledge in this area. So some of the things may seem quite obvious to most of you, although we believe that this will be helpful for SMEs who are looking to enforce their IP rights in Southeast Asia. And if you have any questions after I share my slides, we can address them, and my boss, Mr. Ravi, will also be here to address any questions you may have. So quickly, this is a snapshot of what I will be presenting and discussing. In brief, really our main objective here is to show you how to combat counterfeits and infringements online, what you should look out for, what you should not be doing, and what is the best way to do it in a strategic, in a practical, and in a cost-effective manner. So coming off the back of Benjamin's presentation, I think it's very clear that EU has in many ways led the charge, and they are way ahead of us in some ways, because they entered the game way before us, and I think that's a great thing, because they are showing us what has already been done, what the struggles, the pain points are, and we can learn from them, and we can try to improve our own system from where they have come. So we will be discussing the prevention and enforcement of IP rights and what measures you can use to do that, COVID-19 and its impact on e-commerce, what an effective strategy looks like for you to enforce your rights online, what we believe is the gold standard for online platforms, some examples and case studies, and finally a summary. So I guess the starting point really is to understand what intellectual property you own. And these are not just trademarks or copyrights. They have IP is a vast area by itself. You have patents, you have registered designs, you have confidential information, and in some ways, all of this can be used to protect and enforce your rights. Most importantly, you need your IP and your trademarks protected and registered within the region. If you're looking at Southeast Asia, you need to register your marks in all 10 or 11 countries. You can do so easily using the Madrid system, where all but Myanmar are members of the Madrid system. So you file an international application and you designate all 10 countries in Southeast Asia. So that's the quickest, fastest, and cheapest way to get your trademarks registered in the region. Secondly, once you have protected your trademarks for all the goods and services that you are using it for, you want to go into monitoring who is using your mark, the use of your mark online. And a lot of people talk about this, but I guess the easiest way to do this is to show you how to do it, I think. And I think it's a very simple mechanism and a very simple process. But before I do so, I just wanted to let everyone know that when I show you some examples. I'm not targeting any platforms. I'm not targeting any brands. It's purely for illustrative and learning purposes, and to make the point of how you monitor your trademark online. By and large, the same situation is prevalent across all the platforms, and for many, many brands, they're all having this problem, as shared by many of the presenters yesterday. Online counterfeits is a problem. It's a rampant problem, and I guess that's why we're all here. So we will share some examples of counterfeits, how to find them, and how to stop them. So again, I'm not trying to show Shopee, but it's just an example. So I will use Shopee to illustrate just how you do a monitoring. So I chose Longchamp as a brand, just for illustrative purposes. There's another brand as well. So the best way is to just key in Longchamp or whatever your trademark is, go on any e-commerce platform. The best way or the simplest way, as far as I know, and you would know better because you know your brand better, but is to just look at the price points. So you look at the lowest price points, you look at your brand, you look at the products. In most cases, it is quite clear that it's a counterfeit. This is one example. Because the bag is only $25.90, it's about 80 USD in real. I mean, the original item is 80 USD. You can see from the price point, you can see from some of the comments here that, well, we don't think it's genuine, at least a consumer doesn't think so. So this is one example. I can show you another example very quickly of another brand, just to show you that I think what I'm trying to show you is how easy it is to find counterfeits online in the marketplace. So I will select another brand randomly, really. So Tory Burch is the brand that I've selected. Same thing, I just go price, I go low to high. I look at something that is $3.99 in Singapore, which is ridiculously cheap, of course. You can see the number of items available, 2,400 pieces. You can see the other kind of products that this seller is selling, all branded goods. You can go into their profile just to have a sense of how big this seller is. So you want all this information so that you can determine the appropriate action that you should take. So this seller has 444 listings in all. If you just scroll through the full number of listings, you can see that the prices are all very low. There are numerous different brands on display. So this is, I guess, something what we would call as a power seller, which I will explain to you in a bit as well. So this is really monitoring your trademarks online. And let me just make sure that I'm going back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so monitoring is basically searching for the use of your trademarks on the e-commerce marketplaces. You can do so on the app stores, you can do so on the social media platforms, you can do so across third-party websites, even Shopify or whatever that, and just understand, as a matter of in market intelligence for your own brand information purposes, and as an IP enforcement measure, how to identify counterfeits, how to identify infringements, and this forms your data set with which you're going to approach the platforms, approach the intermediaries, and try and remove all of this. So the limitations and difficulties with takedown complaints, because a lot of the discussion has been focused on how can I remove an infringement, how can I remove a counterfeit online. There are some limitations because, quite simply, there is no effective way to make sure that this listing or this seller's products are taken down quickly and that they stay down. So what you want is for them not to appear online. And I completely understand, and I really appreciate, on behalf of, I think, all the brands, that e-commerce marketplaces have done a very good job in putting in place IP procedures, IP processes to make sure that their ways to deal with the problem, to process your takedown applications. And there are restrictions like bans, and there are restrictions like they will suspend your account, they will suspend the seller from using this account. But as you can see, the problem still is there, and it's a challenge, and the difficulties are also very prevalent, especially because, like what Benjamin just shared, every platform has its own mechanism, has its own process. They want different things, they want different information, they have different email addresses, they have different forms. So if you're just looking at Southeast Asia, at the whole universe of e-commerce marketplaces, app stores, you're looking at social media platforms, you are looking at maybe around 50 different businesses or service providers or companies who are hosting all this stuff online, So if for one person or one team of rights owners to do this, it can be a challenge, but I guess EU has shown the way in ways where it's shown us the way, because there is a simplified way to do this, and as it gets simpler, it gets better and easier for everyone. So going on to the next point, because you will see some sellers who are repeat infringers, you will see some sellers who are power sellers, you will see some sellers who are doing this blatantly by posting listings which are obviously counterfeit because they use words like replica or 100% non-authentic, or inspired by, or whatever. And this list will change because behavior changes, and sellers become more sophisticated, and it's a never-ending sort of cat and mouse process when it comes to enforcing your rights online. So taking appropriate enforcement action is crucial, and you need the right kind of data to understand who this seller is, how big his online presence is, whether it's limited to one marketplace or he's operating in all the marketplaces that's available in that specific country or even regionally, because you have the ability to open an account in Shopee, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, Lazada, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand. You can do it on a larger scale. So there are alternatives as well to takedowns, and some of these alternatives are sending cease and desist letters, conducting investigations to find out more about this seller, to obtain evidence, to conduct raids. Civil and criminal actions are usually the last resort, but they have been considered in the past and should be considered in appropriate cases as well. So let me move on to COVID-19's impact. So I think it has been blatantly obvious that the shift has moved from retail to online in almost every country in the world, purely because all of us are stuck at home. And there has been a big boom, there's been a big surge of retailers who have to shift their businesses online. Even in Singapore today, food stalls have had to shift their businesses online. Retail stores are the same. And I just wanted to show you some examples of what's been happening in Singapore, because this is where we're from and this is where we know it best. So just examples of e-commerce booming because of COVID, and the reasons why this has happened is because of lockdowns, closing of national borders. This example, this is from CNBC as well. It's just, I'm sure you see this in the news every day. Everybody is shopping online. So there has been a huge increase in revenue and in sales transactions and in activity that has moved online, and this is prevalent, I believe, in every country in all over the world. But the authorities have also stepped up their game, because they have seen that it is a huge problem, and especially because of COVID. You can see here HSA is the Health and Science Authority of Singapore, I believe. Yeah, so they are in charge of health products, and as a result of COVID-19, test kits, face masks have all been put online in Singapore for very cheap prices, and there was no other way to do it but for the Health Sciences Authority to come in and to help enforce this, really. So in Singapore, the police, IPRB, the Intellectual Property Rights Branch has also been very active and very helpful in helping brand owners enforce against these problems that have arisen specifically because of counterfeits. So the authorities are there to help you as a brand owner, as a right holder. And this is a recent case in April 2011 where a 34-year-old man was arrested. More than 41,000 pieces of infringing face masks were seized by the police. And aside from assisting brand owners in conducting raids, in removing listings online, they've also got on the education drive to bring awareness, to warn people about where to buy good masks, what are the guidelines, what kind of masks you shouldn't use, So I think that the authorities have done a very good job in bringing about an awareness to COVID-19 and the impact that it's had. I think most importantly, going forward for brand owners, because of COVID-19, because of everything shifting online, there is a greater impetus now to leverage on data and technology to build up your understanding about the online ecosystem and to use this data and technology to help improve your own online strategy. A very simple way of doing this, I know data and technology always sounds good and impressive, but nobody knows what it actually means. A very simple way is you keep track of everyone that you filed a takedown complaint against. So you have an Excel sheet, or you have your service provider has given you this information. Okay, this is 1,000 listings taken down last month. So in the next month, when you file the next round of takedown complaints, for example, you match those that are repeat infringers, and then you start to really understand how much of them are taken down, how much of them are coming back up, how much of them are repeat, how much of them are, and you get to understand really, deeper, who these infringers are, what kind of enforcement actions you take, and that would really help rather than just doing it in a haphazard or in not so much of a structured manner. So increase with collaboration and authorities is something that I think all the previous speakers have already spoken about, and I think it is crucial because in every country there are designated enforcement authorities to deal with intellectual property issues, and they are always ready to help. So these include the customs, these include your police, these include your IP office, this includes your SME help desk, and it also of course includes the platforms, because they are a huge stakeholder and a huge player in this. And from my experience dealing with the platforms, they're always willing to help. It is not a case of the rights holder against the platform in most situations, and it should stay that way because collaboration is key. And I think just a few days ago, I emailed someone from Lazada because I had an issue with the takedown, and she replied immediately and she told me how to resolve the issue, and I did whatever she told me to do, and it was done very quickly. So I believe that we are moving towards a more collaborative system, and there are so many options and avenues for you to seek assistance from, and you just need to know the right people to ask, and you just need to raise up your hand actually and call when you need some help. So Just very quickly to show you some examples of COVID-19's impact on the e-commerce marketplace. So, for example, if you are searching for designer face mask, because what I do is I put myself in the shoes of a consumer, and the consumer is the main stakeholder, I believe, in this whole exercise. So if you just do a search, and this is the same more or less search results that you will see on many online platforms, you will see the same very famous brands coming up. You will see them on the first page of the listings. It is rampant. It is everywhere, actually. So maybe I can show you. I mean, if you just search for something like vaccines, which is the hot topic now. Sorry, maybe you need vaccine. But that's a good sign, because what they have done is they have filtered out vaccines with an S, but apparently not with an E. But really the point that I'm trying to show you is that you will see stuff here that you would think shouldn't really be sold because of what we're going through now, like a vaccination card, or look at, I mean, it's a card holder, but it looks like a vaccination card holder. These are vials, glass metal vials. These are vaccination cards. It can be a very scary experience when people who are less informed and people who are not so technologically aware of what's going on and what you can buy and what you shouldn't buy, online, because consumers are a varied bunch and they need to be protected, I think, which is the whole point in enforcing your IP rights, is to protect your consumers. So moving on, what I would like to share is the strategy that we think would work and we believe has worked for some of our clients in the past, is really to have a program in place. And the program can be a simple program, it can be a complex program, but the fundamentals are the same. The key point is to update your IP portfolio, understand all the registrations that you have, keep them handy, make sure that you have all your copyright in place. You know that these images belong to your company. When were they first used? When was it? You have an inventory of it. Collaborate and conduct brand trainings with the authorities, with the customs, with the police, with all those stakeholders, including the platforms, because you want them to know that you are actively enforcing your rights and that you will take action and that you will support the authorities if they come across anything that is counterfeit, or that you can rely on their support when you find something and you want to conduct a raid, or when you want to take more stringent legal action where it is appropriate to do so. The platforms are also very helpful. I think Lazada showed that they have taken joint actions with several IP owners in the past. So where they are able to lend some assistance, they will also do so. So again, the key here is to align all their interests among the different stakeholders. Yes, there are resource issues, obviously, for everyone. Yes, it's not so, it can be very process driven, but once we all look at the whole problem as something in which we need to do together to protect the consumer, who is at the end of the day, he is your consumer and he is the platform's consumer and he's the one buying the product, So I think we need to shift to a more structured system where we all align our interests and we look after the consumer, and then we can start to achieve better results, I think. So the online program is really a monitoring program and an enforcement program. So you monitor your use of your trademarks online, on all the marketplaces, on all the mobile apps, on all the independent websites. Of course, there's an easy way to do this. There are service providers who can do this for you. You also keep watch of the IP registers for similar marks that are may be a problem for your business, may be too close for comfort in terms of similarity of goods and services or whatever. You monitor the companies that are being registered in each country and the domain names that are being registered in each company. Whenever someone is doing business, they have to first register a company, and they would definitely have to register a website because that's your main online presence. So any companies or domain names which are very, very similar to your trademarks or your company's name, you get this information and you take the appropriate enforcement action against it. Monitoring the online platforms, you've already seen that. So there are some easy targets, some easy wins where you see a blatant counterfeit, you just file the takedown, the platform will remove it according to their own guidelines, you know. So majority of the counterfeits or majority of the listings that you find, maybe 95% of them will be listings where you just want to file a takedown because you don't want to spend time on it, you don't want to spend resources on it, you want it gone quick. So the platforms will do that for you if you comply with whatever requirements that they need. Then there is the additional 5% maybe of listings, depending on what your problem or which industry you come from or what specific area you are looking at. There are some power sellers. These are people who are selling in large quantities, or they have multiple accounts online. Maybe they even have a registered business. They are operating across different markets as well. So once you identify these power sellers, and an easy way to identify power sellers is to do a watch, to monitor your marks, to identify the repeat sellers because they've come back despite the takedown notice, despite knowing that their listing has been removed, despite the assistance of the platforms. So you understand the nature of this seller much better because you know that you've taken down these things from him before, and yet here it is again, you know. Then you can escalate this seller and determine what is the appropriate enforcement action that you need to take. Is it a case where you need to obtain evidence of infringement? Is it a case where you need to inform the authorities and ask them for assistance? Is it a case where you need to build up a legal case against this particular seller if he's causing a significant problem to your business? And lastly, I guess, keeping up with the changes and trends. These sellers are mostly normal, average guys, individuals like you and me looking to make a quick buck on the side, you know. But once the business grows and they do make a lot of money from it, they tend to do it more, and they grow in sophistication because they understand their eco-space better as well. They understand what has been taken down before, and they can identify how to evade the takedown. You know, they can identify, or they know that operating anonymously is maybe the key to evading detection from the brand owner, from even the platform, from the authorities, and they find better ways to keep doing their business and not get caught. So your effective online strategy has to be constantly, or rather you have to keep up to date with whatever changes, such as they no longer use the obvious keywords like fake anymore. You know, there are new trends on how they post these listings. Sometimes they won't use an obvious picture. Sometimes they won't use the brand name in the listing. So just as you go, you will find this out for yourself, and you can improve your program as you carry on. Next, I would like to talk about where I think, or rather what we believe is a wish list. And this wish list, I was very glad to see, was very, very consistent with what our other speakers have shared over yesterday and today, because it really is something where the EU has taken the lead because they've been in this game much longer than us. I think Angelique shared about the EU's reported best practices. So they have already an MOU in place for a very long time. Jory discussed the observations from these MOUs and what can be improved. And Benjamin just earlier addressed some of the key points on IPR misuse. So we can learn from what the EU has done and from their MOUs and improve our own system where the online platforms are responsible in some areas. There's clarity on what they're responsible for. The brand owner has some responsibility on them to enforce their own rights. But the gold standard, which is done by some platforms already, eBay is one of them who do many of these things because of their own history and litigation that they've gone through with several brand owners in the past. They have evolved and they are at a much more sophisticated level when it comes to enforcing your own intellectual property rights. So proactive pre-screening of listings, this has been done even by some of the platforms in Southeast Asia. Lazada has done it. The example that I showed earlier of Shopee identifying vaccines as a keyword such that when you key it in, you get no listings. You get zero results. So before these listings go live, you have a filter, you pre-screen them, and we are not talking about, oh, you need to pre-screen the counterfeits. You know, you need to pre-screen what is an infringement. No, we are talking about the low-hanging fruit. So the most obvious of cases, you don't let it come on. So stuff that is blatantly inspired, blatantly replica, blatantly infringing, that you shouldn't be put on any platform, you don't let it come on in the first place. So you have pre-screening. A quick and clear takedown process is very important because of the sheer size of listings that are counterfeit or that constitute an infringement. Many times these listings are filed in the hundreds or in the thousands, and it needs to come down quickly because the next batch of listings is on the way. You know, that's how rampant the problem is. And of course, brand owners and platforms are trying their best to make the policies, the procedures very clear when it comes to how do you take down your listings. Now, aside from mere takedowns, as I mentioned, there are a portion of sellers who are repeat power sellers who sell in large quantities, and there's no point filing takedowns month after month, year after year against the same power sellers when all they can do is change their account, get a new phone number, register a whole set of new email addresses, and verify it with their new phone number. And carry on as per usual. This is what's happening. So what we think would work and what eBay has already done for IP owners who use the Vero program, when you report an infringement, they take it down within 48 hours and they provide you the names and addresses of power sellers who are operating there so that you can take your own legal action. And we think that this is appropriate enforcement strategy to implement because the platform is out of the picture. The brand, the rights owner is responsible for enforcing their own rights, and they can do so once they find out who is the power seller operating the account. So evidence of past transactions is also very useful because the classic example is when you previously, maybe 2 or 5 years ago, when you do a raid, or when you take legal action against a certain seller, you go to his retail shop, or you go to his warehouse, or you go to his factory, and you seized thousands of infringing items, and all this constitutes evidence of infringements, which you then show to the court, which you use it to get judgment or damages or whatever. But now, because all these activities and all these infringements are operating online, there is no 1,000 pieces of infringing goods. You're never going to see that anymore, especially in a country like Singapore, where there's no manufacturing. So how then do you determine or show how big this seller is? The platform has this data. They have a history of all the past transactions that this seller has committed or that has sold. And if they give you this information, you can then use this information to show as evidence and to get a reasonably good settlement and to put an end to this, really. Because once you go after the individual, you solve the problem and they don't come back. That's been our experience. So I think the EU has done a lot of good work in setting the framework for IP enforcement. And for Southeast Asia, there are a few ways or programs that you can use in order to protect your marks. So I'm sharing with you some case studies that we have. So you can operate an online enforcement program across Southeast Asia, depending on your business needs, depending on how big the problem is, depending on your budget and your resources, because at the end of the day, you want to manage the problem in a practical, and in a way that makes commercial sense for your business. So one option is to scan the whole of Southeast Asia, all the marketplaces, all the e-commerce websites, all the mobile app stores, get all this data, identify what's infringing, file a quick and dirty takedown program, and do this on and do this for a consecutive period, and then you will drastically reduce the visibility of the 95% of takedowns that you are filing on the e-commerce marketplaces. It can be done in a cost-effective manner. It can be done in a practical manner where you don't spend all your time every single day looking at these things on Lazada or Facebook, because I'm sure you have much more important work to do than that. So that's one option, looking at the whole ecosystem in Southeast Asia. Another option which could make more sense to a small and medium business like yours is to focus really on your key markets or the key platforms where you know that you have a problem. You don't need the whole gamut of Southeast Asia, or you might not want to start that way. So if you think that platform X and Y are specifically an issue, and they might be an issue only in certain few countries, then you can tailor that enforcement program to what is actually needed by your business. And it is a flexible program. It can be adjusted as it goes, and we work with you authorities will work with the platforms in order to make sure that it's showing good results, which you can show to your business owners and your management. So having the structure and having an idea of what you want to protect, what you want to enforce against based on the trends that you're seeing online, and having a structure to that is really the key to avoiding reactive and passive enforcement actions. So what I mean by this is that we've seen it from our experience as well, where maybe a senior manager or one of your directors in a particular country is walking down the streets and he sees a counterfeit item being sold openly, and that escalates into a huge problem because nobody is, or rather everyone is panicking because they think that not enough is being done. How can it be that I saw a counterfeit football jersey or something on the streets when I was walking with one of my clients or something, you know? And then you tend to fall into this trap of taking enforcement action which is not appropriate, where you spend too much budget on a single matter when it's not actually the most pressing or the biggest target or the one where you're going to get a good win for your company, you know. So aligning your enforcement program with your resources and with your budget is really important as a business, and it's also important because you get to show victories and show results when you do enforcement, and this justifies the budget which you're spending on legal actions, which is also a very important aspect to it, because as we all know, budgets are a problem. They're getting smaller, and we need to be smarter about how we enforce our rights online, you know, and that means going after the good targets, getting good settlements, and achieving good results. So I guess in summary, I'm a bit early, but in summary, I would like to share one story which my boss frequently shares. And he's obviously, Mr. Ravi is very experienced, but he usually shares this story with our clients because he's been around the block. And the story goes like this. A long time ago, in the 80s and in the 90s, Singapore's retail sector was filled with counterfeits. You could go to this particular mall in Singapore known as Sim Lim Square, where fake CDs were being sold, whether it was Microsoft or gaming CDs or movies and series. You know, it was there, it was everywhere, and everyone knew about it. But it was so hard to stop, you know, because it was rampant at that point in time. So he walked with a very senior official, someone with a lot of authority in the IP sector from the US. And what he did was he just brought this person to the mall at that point, because that person needed to see it for himself, the number of retail shops openly selling CDs and counterfeit products within a retail establishment. And after seeing that, actually the problem was resolved very quickly, because the right people got to hear about it, the authorities got involved, they put a stop to it, and now in Singapore, when you walk on the streets, you can hardly find counterfeits, so it's very hard to come by. That really is a story of the past, but I think it's especially relevant here because the same problem is replicated, just that it's online, you know, and you can go online and you can see a whole host of counterfeits, and nobody's doing anything about it, or everyone is trying to do something about it, but there's no solution. So I think the key is to collaborate with each other. The key is having clear laws in place, whether we start with MOUs like Lazada has done in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, in Thailand, whether it's enforcing your rights strictly but fairly, these are all ways where, these are all the right steps that we should take. And by working together and by aligning our mutual interests, which I think in this case has to be the consumer, there are so many stakeholders here. There are so many of you who are very senior authorities. There are so many of you with a lot of power to influence intellectual property and how it is perceived in your own and business, and you have the power to really shape how we move forward in this, which is why you're here, which is why it is great to have this discussion, because the problem is very clear and we all need to work together in order to resolve the problem. So I will end off by saying that protect your IP regionally, and especially where you need it most. Monitor your markets, the platforms, and approach the SMEs, help desk, approach the IP officers, approach the platforms, approach the authorities, and get help where you need it, because help is available. And I think we're all hoping that this is a problem which can be resolved, or we work towards it at least. Yeah, I think I'm at the end. Please feel free to connect with us. Thank you again to the SME Help Desk for having us.